What do you remember about the setup for severe weather the night of June 7th, heading into June 8th, 1984?
Well, it was very similar to a lot of other nights before and since that are ripe for severe weather, and that you had a strong south and southwest wind, mostly south. You had high humidity, and storms feed on moisture, so you've got to have that dew point up there to have the moisture in the air. And it also had an approaching cold front, which is a wedge of cooler air that can drive underneath and lift ahead of it. And finally, you had, in the upper air winds, showed a twisting wind field with height. And that's what gives the spin possibility to tornado formation. So I would say it was primed, and I think we anticipated severe weather. We had a tornado watch that was issued about 10 p.m., but certainly nobody could predict something as bad as the F5 tornado that hit Barneveld. I woke up after midnight, and we were living in Verona on top of a hill. We could see all the way to Blue Mounds and Barneveld.
Yep.
And I just woke up and I thought something's wrong. And I looked out the window, and the whole sky was like constant lightning, like not just once in a while, but constant lightning. So I went out to our living room where we could see out those 30 miles. And it was like a strobe light.
Wow.
And which as a meteorologist, that's not normal. That's an indicator of a really severe storm.
Yeah.
So I said to my wife, something's wrong. And not too long after, I heard the radio reports of disaster in Barneveld, and I called my partner, Terry Shockley, and I said, Terry, we got to get out there. We can't wait for the damage reports. I'm sure there's a lot of damage. And so we agreed to rent the helicopter, and I did. And so I woke our chief photographer, John Scappell, up at home. He met me at the airport, and we left by 6 a.m.
Wow.
And we were in there by 6:20, probably. Landed just south of town, and we walked through the whole town. We knew when we arrived we wanted to be very careful, because when you have all this devastation, you have all these people who are dead or missing, hurt. We can't just blast in there and say, what was it like? You know, we had to be extremely sensitive to the questions we asked and how we asked them. But people, to their great credit, were very interested and willing to tell us about what it was like and what their losses had been and how thankful they were to be surviving, and a determination even then that they were going to rebuild no matter what. I mean, that came from the very first moment in town. We're going to fix this. I mean, it was a great story, it really was.
As a scientist who knows what it takes to create severe weather and who knows how strong wind has to be to cause damage like what you were seeing, what goes through your mind about something that you knew from a distance looked bad? You're seeing the devastation and you're kind of piecing together what might have happened in that time. What were you thinking?
Well, at first I could easily see that there was very little left. I mean, everything was flattened. And then as we walked up to some of the trees, not only were all the leaves gone and a lot of the branches, but the bark had been taken off these trees. Then we got up to the water tower, which is near the center of town, which was still standing, fortunately. But underneath the water tower, which weighs hundreds of tons, there were wood slivers, pieces of wood that were driven underneath the steel plates of the water tower. So the whole thing, the whole water tower had been lifted up enough that the wind could drive pieces of wood underneath. And that was one of the greatest demonstrations of the power of this that I have ever imagined could be.
9 people died that night. Obviously
Yes.
a tragedy for the town. Could it have been worse?
I'm surprised it was not worse, because when we helicoptered in there, amazingly enough, the tornado went literally right up the main street of Barneveld, right up the main street. And then in the helicopter, we followed it for another 35 miles until it petered out. 35 miles. And, you know, part of it is just the bad luck of the situation. If that had hit a half a mile west or half a mile east of town and gone 35 miles through the cornfields, it still would have been notable. But it wouldn't have done this tragic job on Barneveld.
After this June, after you saw the devastation that was in Barneveld, the next time there was severe weather, the next time you had a system setting up in a similar way, what was going through your head as a meteorologist, as someone who had been on the ground and seen the devastation that was possible?
Well, you certainly never, you hope it never can happen again. But I think we are all cautious from that point forward on any developing situation. I think we took Wisconsin weather after that very seriously, as well we should.